Hello, my name is Aaron Van Steinberg. I'm from Edmond Memorial High School, and some folks with me here today.
I'm Tyler Thomas from Mustang High School.
I'm Jasmine and Chauncey from Mercy School.
Cool. Today we are going to be talking about the history of music in Oklahoma and how, from very humble beginnings, we rose to have several artists, very nationally prominent and influential. And so, Tyler, how did it all start in Oklahoma?
Basically, when the Indian Removal Act happened and Native Americans came to Oklahoma, there were different kinds of Native Americans. They all listened to different type of music or did different things. So at their little powwows, they'd all come together and form new breed or new sounding music.
Right, and so that territorial music became pretty unique as far as how it was different than anything that the Native Americans themselves had ever heard. But what happened after that? The land run happened. Jasmine.
Appalachians folk bands, they brought country music and it really influenced Oklahoma.
Right, and that country music is something we're known for. Reba McEntire, Garth Brooks, Toby Keith. They're all very famous, and it all started with a bunch of settlers coming. And then after that, in the 20s and 30s, once you sort of get a little bit more, Oklahoma's a state now. What happened, Tyler, with about around that time?
Basically, the bands that were already here would go on tours and come back with these swing and jazz bands. And this happened around the 1920s, 1930s. And everybody kind of got used to this sounding. They started liking the new jazz or swing or whatever. It kind of gave them more of a beat.
Right, and even some super famous jazz musicians, like Count Basie from Kansas City, his orchestra, a lot of the musicians from his orchestra actually came from Oklahoma, and so there was a lot of, in the beginnings of jazz and swing, quite a bit of uniqueness to what Oklahoma had to offer there. And then what sort of happened after that, Jasmine, in Oklahoma's?
In the 1960s, rock and roll became really famous here and more listened to.
Right, rock and roll, and that's where you had certain things in Oklahoma City, Tyler, like.
Oh, well, the music festival or whatever, things like that.
Oh, in the 1960s, there's a lot of there was a scene in Oklahoma City.
The Kane's Ballroom or whatever in Norman.
Oh, in Tulsa, Kane's Ballroom. Yeah, they saw a lot of musicians there, but there was a few that came through. A lot of garage bands and psychedelic bands, and saw certain venues in Oklahoma City, and so they were really part of that in the 1960s, especially, and then in the 80s and 90s. There's a few more musicians that came around, like
Chainsaw Kittens and Nixons.
Right, and then of course everyone knows the Flaming Lips, big band in Oklahoma, is still here, still making a lot of music. And then even in the later 90s, there was even more popular mainstream bands, rock and roll, that came through, or from Tulsa, or from Oklahoma City,
like the Shiny Toy Guns, Kings of Leon, Umbrella.
Hanson was up there too. Hanson came from.
Yeah.
All American Rejects.
All American Rejects. That's another one. That was early.
They're pretty big.
Early 2000s,
yeah.
And so you do really see Oklahoma keeping up with what's going on at the national scene, in Oklahoma throughout the time that it happened, and even now there's certain festivals, there's a Norman, the Norman Music Festival at the end of April is always a big deal, and then in September, a pretty famous folk band, Mumford & Sons, is coming to Guthrie, so that's about that. My name is Aaron Van Steinberg.
I'm Tyler Thomas.
I'm Jasmine and Chauncey.
Yeah, that was the history of music in Oklahoma. Thank you for listening.